Hey, what's up guys, my name is Cherno. Today we're going to be taking a look at Ghost of Tsushima. What I've heard is an absolutely amazing game. So I ran a quick poll on Twitter to figure out what to look at next, and you guys voted for Ghost of Tsushima. Now, as always, I don't really have much of an idea at what it is I'm going to be looking at. From what I've heard about this game though, it's absolutely amazing. I know that it's set in Japan in the time of the samurai. I absolutely love Japan. I love all things Japan. My honeymoon was in Japan and I just absolutely fell in love with the country. I really am excited to take a look at this. I found this 18 minutes of Ghost of Tsushima gameplay. I'll leave a link in the description below if you want to watch that first, because I'll probably end up pausing and talking about this. Now, in terms of what I want to focus on when I'm looking at this, I'm going to be specifically focusing on the graphics as well as the general interaction between the player and the environment. So essentially the gameplay. As a game engine developer, it's obviously very easy to just look at graphics as just, oh, okay, well, this either looks good or it looks bad and that's the end of the story. But obviously there's a lot more to a game than graphics, and I don't want to just be looking at the graphics, although that is, you know, in the course of this fairly short video that I'm making, the graphics is probably the biggest thing that's going to stick out about whether or not I'm going to be impressed by this game. Also, even though this is technically a reaction because I've never seen this video before, I want to steer away a little bit from the direction of just reaction videos. I promised you I wouldn't make too many of them, and it seems like I am. You and me, we're just here to sit down, look at this amazing gameplay from what I've heard, and just have a good time. So let's just forget about the whole reaction stuff. Let's just check it out.
Hello everyone, I'm Jason Connell from Sucker Punch Productions. We have a lot to show you today about Ghost of Tsushima. Combat, customization, special modes.
Alright, I want to talk about this opening cutscene a little bit, but I also want to mention that this is running on a PlayStation 4. As far as I know, the only platform this is available for is a PlayStation 4, and we'll maybe talk about the benefits of that a little bit later on. But so far, opening scene definitely looks pretty good to me. I like the way that the environment feels here. The rays of sunshine here are all very dynamic. These shadows you can see here as the leaves actually move with the wind, they're all changing, which of course tells me they're dynamic. All of the leaves falling down are really cool. It's interesting to see where the leaves end up. I'm sure they don't end up on the ground. If I had to say something that I don't like about this and that I think could be done better with this in terms of like just environment art, is the actual leaves on the ground. They look quite flat, and I doubt that they're actual geometry. They might be. But even so, I feel like the leaves on the ground, they're going to stay on the ground. As far as I know, at least from watching this opening shot here, they're most likely static. So I think making them a little bit more, you know, 3D, maybe with some displacement mapping or something like that, would have probably sold this a little bit more. This kind of autumny, warm color vibe though, I really, really like. And that blue sky off in the background, I think the composition of this scene is really beautiful.
World of Tsushima.
Wow, that's really beautiful. I love the grass. The grass looks incredible. All of the foliage looks incredible. The clouds off in the background, that little building off in the background. This is excellent, and I love the light and the kind of bloom style effect that they've got going on as well. I don't know, what would you even call that? Like kind of a lens flare, I guess, because it's from the brightness of the light. I think they've done an excellent job with fading out the scene. So when you look off into the distance and you see these trees are kind of, you know, they're off in the fog there. There's just this natural fog that's everywhere. And because of that, when we look at areas that are further away from the camera and thus we can't really afford to spend as much time rendering them, they still look great. I'm noticing this line of trees here. They look great. I mean, obviously there's probably no detail in the grass, but that doesn't bother me at all. The fire and that particle kind of system in the background looks really good as well. But these houses as well, they're off there in the fog, but it feels natural to me. This feels like it could be a photo to me. Whereas if we look at the fog in the Halo video that we looked at recently, that just hit me like a wrecking ball. This, on the other hand, feels a lot more natural. And I love that.
Exploration has been at the heart of our open world design since the very...
This kind of rock, the nearby rocks though, I don't know, maybe I'm just spoiled looking at like Unreal Engine 5 and a few other kind of more next-gen-y things, because this is a PlayStation 4 game, don't forget that. Maybe I'm being a little bit spoiled, but I feel like the detail here is kind of like, could be improved.
Very beginning. But you can't have exploration if you don't have curiosity.
I love the cloth
So
physics.
we've continually asked ourselves, how can we let the island guide you in the most thematic and immersive ways possible?
The grass, whilst I did say the grass looked really good to me in the beginning, this doesn't look bad. And I feel like a disclaimer is coming upon us. I feel like I need to say that so far this looks great. Hope I'm not offending anyone who either worked on the game or really loves the game. So far this looks great. This looks great out of 10. But obviously me coming into this, I'm going to try and find flaws in it and also point out things that stick out to me. And one of the things that sticks out to me here is the fact that we've got an obvious kind of base grass texture, which is just lying on top of this rock here. You can see it kind of in the background. And then on top of that, we have the actual grass geometry. And the grass geometry, which is most likely just kind of instanced with some kind of vertex shader, most likely actually making it sway in the wind here, there's kind of nothing in between there. The animation is great, don't get me wrong. I love the way that they've done the grass animation here, but it also kind of just, there's no... For me, it doesn't blend very well, and maybe that's because there's no, like, layer of smaller grass. There's just these grass blades are huge. They are very big. Like, if you look at his leg, they come up halfway up his calf, probably. Like, they're not small, but then the ones that are on the rock really flat, they are super small. And, because they're non-existent, right? It's just a flat texture. And the texture looks particularly flat as well. And because of that, there's nothing in between. There's these huge grass blades, and then there's like the supposedly tiny ones, but they're completely flat. And so as the camera moves especially, and you get to see that, there's nothing in between blending them. Maybe having a layer of smaller grass blades in between would make it look better. But then again, maybe these aren't even grass blades. They could just be, this kind of tall grass foliage type deal, not grass per se.
Since the very beginning.
But anyway.
So we've continually asked ourselves.
I think if I was designing this scene and I looked at this, and again, I don't know what's possible for a PlayStation 4 on this scene. It's not like I have the profiling data in front of me and I'm like, oh yeah, we have room for this in terms of like draw calls or like how much time the GPU or the CPU is spending on this. I can figure out, okay, we can squeeze out some more resources from this, so let's add this in. Maybe they're at the end of their budget, like in terms of frame time, and this is the best they can do. In which case it's fine. And what I'm saying probably is, anyway, enough with the disclaimers. You guys get me. I'm not trying to be mean. Just take everything I say positively, okay?
How can we let the island guide you in the most thematic and immersive ways possible?
What he's talking about as well with the whole island, I guess, being, how should I say this? Like the whole island is quite like explorable, right? It's all about exploration. That is really cool to me. I love stuff like that. I love the fact that we have this, what looks like a very beautiful environment, but there's also like smoke and there's this mystery going on here. Being able to explore that as the player, to me, that's really like appealing. And I don't know, I haven't seen much of this game, but we'll see how it goes. Maybe I'll pick it up. I love the lighting. The lighting is so nice. The leaves blowing around, really, really nice. And see, the thing is, getting a few leaves on screen, like right now, that doesn't cost anything. Like, that is not even probably going to show up on like a profile of where on earth the frame time is being spent here. I think that like adding that is almost free, and it does so much. That's why when Ratchet and Clank, when I was looking at that and I was seeing all the particles flying around, I mean, you know, you don't want to go overboard either because that's just unrealistic, but it can do so, like just throwing a few particles in can just do so much for a scene, and it's almost like it's almost free in terms of performance, and it probably wouldn't take too long to actually implement. So it's such a good thing to do, you know? And I love how it feels with this scene. Imagine it without this, it would feel a little bit more empty. Notice how the gust of wind affects all the foliage as well. That's a really cool detail. Okay, when he lands, like a little grass particle explosion as well. That's a cool detail. Horse lighting and their hair kind of effects here are, well, let's just say they're PS4 gen. This is funny because he's completely in shadow now, and that's exactly what people have been saying is the problem with Halo Infinite. But I mean, and I won't go into my thoughts on the whole in shadow necessarily looks bad thing. Maybe I will in the future. But in this case, you can definitely see the difference between direct sunlight and shadow here. Definitely just looks, it does look different, and it does look worse. I expect when the horse appears out of shadow, it will look nicer. I love the shadows. I really like the dynamic shadows. I wonder what technique they're using for that. I mean, we're not close enough to the shadow to actually see what the edges look like and how soft it is, but right now it looks great. Okay, I'm just looking at the shadow slightly. Could be basic like PCF filtering, to be honest. Okay, this is amazing. Look at all the particles flying around. I love that. I love the kind of fog wind effect. I don't even know what that is technically, but it looks great. That, just the ambience, you know, of this fog kind of situation and the clouds and just the composition of this scene. Like, I expected that they're going for a fairly photorealistic vibe, and I really feel that because it feels like the way that they've designed this scene in terms of especially the lighting and the colors and, you know, the clouds and all of that stuff is very realistic. And it goes a long way, because even though they've got a lot of colors here, you know, it doesn't feel fake at all. Even though they've got a lot of colors here, the saturation of this scene is fairly low. Right? These green trees here and this kind of the luminance of them as well, the dark kind of green parts as well. They're not overly green, you know, same with the clouds and the sky. It's not overly blue. It's a really nice balance, and these trees in the background as well. And it's interesting what you can achieve just by playing with colors. If your, let's just say, color skill level is not particularly high, then you can make a lot of mistakes and you can make the scene look a lot less realistic, even with amazing lighting, amazing shadows, all of that stuff. But just by either playing with the source colors, the base colors of all of your albedo maps and stuff like that, as well as maybe adding like color correction and color grading filters on top of that, like as like a post effect, that stuff, I think people underestimate that, to be honest. That does a lot. And you can see it here. Oh, I love the foliage. I love the flowers and all of that stuff. Bamboo. I want to go to Japan again. Too bad no one can travel for like the next 10 years. I'm also looking for like pop-in and like in general how how stuff is changing, how geometry and how the environment is changing when the actual camera gets closer to a different part of it. And it's done really well. I think I can see some of the shadow cascades popping, maybe. I don't want to go back and analyze this too much, though.
The guided wind can take you to all kinds of locations in the game, like this farmstead that's been taken over by the Mongols.
Reminds me a little bit of The Witcher, the way that the UI looks, maybe, and just in general, the horse riding.
Collectibles. But what about the things that you don't know about, that you haven't seen yet, that you don't know exist? Keep your eyes peeled for other visual cues. Smokestacks on the horizons, interesting and odd-shaped trees, or maybe even animals trying to get your attention.
Yeah, that's great. I love games that integrate, essentially, as he said, guides into the actual environment of the game. So instead of having a pop-up in the UI being like, hey, go over there, like actually a visual clue from the environment, like smoke, or like he said, like an oddly shaped tree or something like that. That's always the best way to go. Makes it so much more immersive. And also, I guess this is gameplay, right? There's no HUD. I just realized there's very little UI. I mean, there's stuff like the titles popping up, I think a little bit before as well. There were, yeah, like this stuff up here. But in general, like there's very little. There's no UI in this shot. That's cool. Definitely cool. Oh, a bird. Some birds will lead Jin to points of interest. That's cool. So that's what I mean. Bird better than arrow, confirmed.
Stay away, my lord. The spirits of vengeful samurai haunt this forest. Let's go, Nobu.
Those shadows look a little weak. So do these, but you know, that's what for current gen shadows, that's pretty much standard. Shadows, and without ray tracing, it's very difficult to do good dynamic shadows. Yeah, that's classic, those shadows. Part of the reason why I don't have shadows in Hazel yet is because I'm still kind of trying to maybe find a technique or modify a few techniques to try and get, you know, shadows to the level that I actually like them without ray tracing, but it's difficult. I like the level of bloom that they're using, by the way. I feel like games pretty much have bloom down nowadays. I feel like it's, you know, it's the first games with bloom like 15 years ago that were like overusing it. This is quite a lot of bloom here, but it looks good. Like this is, I'd say that's perfect amount because it you know, out of the corner of your eye, it's noticeable, it adds to the scene, but it doesn't make it like ridiculous and fake to look at. It's really nice. The adaptive exposure they're using is really smooth as well. Again, pretty standard, but still I appreciate that. What is that, like a fox? Fox den. Oh, this game is beautiful. The way that it's designed with the sun, with like the sun, I guess the gaps in the trees making the sun come through is just, this is a recipe for a beautiful scene. This looks a little weak. These things flopping around in the wind, they're like two-dimensional, essentially. That was beautiful.
Rich with exploration and discovery, and whether you're just following a string of torii gates that'll lead you to a high mountain shrine, or maybe it's just a fox trying to show you something hidden in the woods.
I love the fox.
Either way,
I love the animals,
bring
the
your
birds,
sense
the
of
foxes.
adventure and let the wind guide you.
Oh, that's nice. I love these limited color palette shots that they're showing. Like where, you know, there's pretty much just green here. You know, everything's fairly desaturated, but the green is just everywhere here. It honestly, I know this game has like some kind of photo mode where you can take photos of stuff. I haven't seen it yet, but I can definitely imagine it. This is a perfect scene. This is, I don't know what I would do to this to improve it. I actually don't know. Like, look at this. What would you do? Leave a comment below if you could think of something to do to this to improve this right now. I have 0. I actually have 0. Those trees in the background just look they just look real. Like I love this shot. This is my favorite shot so far. Oh, and I love him releasing the orange kind of colored, red colored leaf there. Autumn is also like pretty much the most beautiful season, or fall for you like Americans out there. So that's also a beautiful time to set this. I don't know if it's actually set in autumn, but there's a lot of autumn colors. Again with the desaturation. See that? That's really cool. It's really cool, and like I think the reason why I'm saying it's really cool because don't get me wrong, desaturation a lot of times, like, you know, it can come off a little bit like amateur. You know, it reminds me of like when kids would be making little like films back in the day. They're probably still doing it now. It's just that I'm not a kid anymore. But you know, they would basically, you know, how would they get the film look? They'd, you know, put their footage into like Premiere or whatever, and then just desaturate it, and then add the contrast, you know? And a lot of times, obviously, that technically does add a bit of a film look, maybe. I mean, I don't know if upping the contrast necessarily would, but anyway, it doesn't matter. We're not discussing that now. Anyway, point is, sometimes desaturation like that gives off that vibe to me, but this is done really well. And note that the contrast is good. The contrast is balanced. There's no harsh blacks and there's no crushed colors here. It's very well balanced in terms of dynamic range. I think they've done a really good job at that, honestly. Oh, look at that reflection. Here we go. That's beautiful. Most likely screen space, but beautiful. Alright, we're going to end off this video here. Let me know what you guys thought. I'm 7 minutes into this. If you want to see a follow-up video in this same style, or perhaps in a different style, if you want me to look at something specific, if you don't like the way that I'm talking, if you don't like what I'm discussing and you want me to maybe get my view on something else, leave a comment below and I will take a look at it next time. I definitely want to continue doing this. Maybe in a couple days or so I might release a follow-up with maybe the rest of this. But if you have like a favorite feature that you're really interested in how I think they achieved that, or if there's something visual that you're not sure how it works, also leave a comment below and I'll try and explain it next video when we continue looking at this. But I hope you guys enjoyed this video. If you did, please don't forget to hit the like button. There's so much stuff that I want to look at in the coming future because I think that we're getting some really, really cool games, both coming out now and being promised for the future. So it's not going to be long. I'll see you guys soon. Goodbye.